So, we are starting with our cardiovascular unit, and this unit is really quite short. It's mostly an overview of the cardiovascular system, and we're going to start with blood formed units. The reason I start with blood is because blood is basically the tissue that does all of the work of the cardiovascular system. The functions of blood are the functions of the cardiovascular system. So the functions of blood are transportation. We're trying to move things around the body, specifically oxygen and carbon dioxide, and other nutrients as well. You also have regulation as a big function here. This is usually done through things like hormones, but you also are trying to regulate temperature using blood flow. As we discussed earlier in the year, depending on how blood flow is increased or restricted to an area, you can increase or decrease the temperature in that part of the body. And that really works based on friction. As blood flows through a vessel, it is not a frictionless substance. So it creates friction. And as that's happening, you're creating heat. And of course, you have protection as one of the big functions here. So we're trying to protect against infection, and we're also trying to prevent blood loss. So characteristics of blood. Blood is thicker and more viscous than water, which means it's less likely to pour. So if you had some in like a cup, you tried to pour it out, it's a little stickier than water, so it's not going to flow out of the cup like water. Generally, you have a blood temperature of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees C. This is really useful for heating up the body, keeping the body warm. The pH is just over neutral. It's slightly basic. You also have 8% of your body weight is made up of blood. And of course, the percentage is about the same no matter what your body weight is. But obviously, people who are heavier are going to have slightly more in actual volume. And so we have the averages here on our last bullet. Males average about 5 to 6 liters, whereas females 4 to 5. Again, it's all depending on your body. Like I said, if you have a larger body, you're obviously going to be on the higher end of that scale. So formed elements include erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are what you would call red blood cells. You have leukocytes, which are white blood cells, and then you have thrombocytes, which are platelets, what you would think of as platelets. Red blood cells outnumber white blood cells 700 to 1. And you have plasma. Plasma is the liquid part of blood, and we'll talk about that in another lecture. So red blood cells, if we wanted to really look at them, they're kind of shaped like a donut. They have this depression here in the middle, and that depression is designed to carry oxygen. They don't have a nucleus, so that they can have as much surface area as possible dedicated to carrying oxygen. You can see that kind of donut shape here. About 4 to 6 million red blood cells or erythrocytes in a single drop of blood. Then like we said, we transport oxygen and carry carbon dioxide away. So these are the guys carrying out gas exchange to your tissues. And hemoglobin is the protein that allows that to happen. So erythropoiesis is the production of red blood cells. This happens in your red bone marrow. And of course, you have anemia, which is a disorder where people have a low red blood cell count. Leukocytes, like I said, these are white blood cells. We're going to go into the different types of white blood cells in just a couple of minutes. But these are guys that are designed for breaking down invaders, either bacteria or viruses. Their job is for defense and immunity. As you can see, greatly limited numbers compared to the 6 million or so we had of red blood cells. So only 4 to 10,000 in a little drop of blood. And like I said, there are lots of different types. So this chart is the one that will help you fill out your notes. In your notes, you have to do the formed element, and then you have to put its function. So you'll want to make sure you go through the chart on this slide and the next so you can see those functions and put those in your notes. Leukocytosis is a disease that affects the number of white blood cells. This is generally when you have an increased number, so you have an uptick in the number of white blood cells that you have. Leukopenia, on the other hand, is where you have white blood cells that are depressed. A lot of times you will see this with like HIV or AIDS. You will see leukopenia as a side effect of those two diseases. Thrombocytes, these are the platelets. They're also called cell fragments because basically they're little bits of cell that are really designed to help you clot. They stick together. They're really sticky. So when you cut yourself and you expose a blood vessel or a capillary, those platelets start sticking together and they start sticking to the surrounding cellular matrix. So they prevent that blood loss. Lots more than white blood cells, but not nearly as many as red blood cells. And these have a really short lifespan. You're cycling platelets all the time to make sure that they're healthy and they don't get sick. All right, that is the end of our first lecture for the cardiovascular system. Like I said, this is a really short unit, so let's keep moving on.